In January 2024, a cartel-linked cash transport truck headed from El Paso to Ciudad Juarez was stopped for routine inspection and found to contain $23 million worth of lead weights instead of money. The truck was locked, untouched, and sealed, yet somehow someone had executed the most audacious heist in modern border history. The only suspect was Thomas Reeves, a 61-year-old homeless man who everyone called Crazy Tom, a former defense contractor turned schizophrenic scavenger who lived in an abandoned electrical substation, talked to concrete walls, and possessed one of the most brilliant technical minds the military-industrial complex had ever produced. Before I walk you through the full story, I just have a small favor to ask. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, and let me know in the comments. What city are you watching from? It's always amazing to see how far this audience is reaching. The Kenworth truck belonged to Northline Amusements, a shell company registered in Delaware, but operating exclusively along the Texas-Mexico border. On paper, Northline serviced arcade machines and casino equipment throughout the Southwest. In reality, the company was a financial laundromat for the Sonora Cartel, moving unreported gambling revenue disguised as legitimate amusement industry transactions. The truck in question had departed El Paso at 11:47 p.m. on January 18, 2024, carrying what the manifest listed as coin cassettes and currency processing equipment bound for Ciudad Juarez. The cargo bay contained 47 sealed metal cassettes, each supposedly loaded with small bills and coins from various gaming establishments across Texas. These cassettes were designed to be tamper-evident, with electronic seals that would trigger alerts if opened improperly. When Mexican customs officials conducted their inspection at the Cordova Bridge crossing, everything appeared normal. The truck's weight matched the manifest exactly, 8,247 kilograms. The driver, Miguel Santos, presented clean documentation and passed a routine sobriety check. The electronic seals on all 47 cassettes showed green status indicators. Santos himself seemed calm, even bored, as he waited for the inspection to conclude. But when cartel operatives opened the cassettes at their destination warehouse 36 hours later, they discovered something impossible. Each cassette had been methodically emptied of cash and refilled with precisely measured lead weights, molded to fit the exact dimensions of the original currency bundles. The replacement was so exact that the truck's weight distribution remained unchanged, fooling both the vehicle's onboard sensors and the border inspection process. The missing amount was staggering: $23 million in untraceable currency, primarily 20s, 50s, and 100s that had been collected from cartel-controlled establishments across 3 states. This wasn't drug money. It was revenue from legitimate businesses that the cartel used to clean their operations. The theft represented months of careful collection and represented a significant blow to their money laundering infrastructure. More troubling for the cartel was how the theft had occurred. The truck's GPS system showed only one anomaly in its route: a 14-minute stop in an industrial zone near a derelict grain terminal on El Paso's east side. During this window, the truck's satellite signal had briefly weakened, though it never completely disappeared. The driver later claimed he had pulled over to check tire pressure after hearing an unusual sound, but found nothing wrong and continued his journey. The area where the truck had stopped was largely abandoned, home to rusted grain silos, defunct railroad spurs, and a maze of deteriorating industrial infrastructure. The only known resident of this wasteland was a man locals called Crazy Tom, a homeless scavenger who lived in an abandoned electrical substation and had a reputation for talking to walls and collecting broken electronics. Thomas Reeves was 61 years old and had been living rough in East El Paso for over a decade. To most people who encountered him, he appeared to be just another casualty of mental illness and urban decay. He spoke in fragments, often addressing empty air or pieces of machinery as if they were people. His clothing was layers of salvaged items: work jackets, thermal underwear, and boots held together with electrical tape. But Tom's background told a different story. Military records obtained through FOIA requests revealed that Thomas Edward Reeves had once held a top-secret security clearance and worked for Raytheon Defense Systems from 1989 to 2002. His specialty was designing microwave encryption switches for military communications equipment, highly classified work that required advanced knowledge of electronic surveillance and signal processing. Reeves had been terminated from Raytheon in 2002, following what his personnel file described as increasingly erratic behavior and paranoid ideation. Colleagues reported that he had become obsessed with the idea that foreign intelligence services were monitoring civilian communications infrastructure and had begun making unauthorized modifications to company equipment. A psychological evaluation recommended immediate treatment for what appeared to be emerging schizophrenia, but Reeves refused all medical intervention and disappeared from official records. For 22 years, Thomas Reeves existed in the shadows of El Paso's industrial zones. He survived by scavenging copper wire, repairing broken radios, and bartering electronic components with other transients. Police had encountered him numerous times, but he had never been arrested for anything more serious than trespassing. Most officers considered him harmless, a brilliant mind broken by mental illness and isolation. His home was an abandoned electrical substation built in the 1970s to service a factory complex that had been demolished decades earlier. The concrete structure was partially underground, with thick walls that provided excellent insulation from both weather and electronic interference. Inside, Reeves had created a workshop filled with salvaged equipment, oscilloscopes, signal generators, radio transceivers, and an array of electronic components sorted into military surplus containers. What made Reeves different from other homeless individuals was his technical sophistication. Despite his apparent disconnection from reality, he maintained an extensive collection of technical manuals, circuit diagrams, and frequency charts. He had somehow acquired detailed maps of El Paso's underground infrastructure, including abandoned utility tunnels, storm drains, and telecommunications conduits. His walls were covered with hand-drawn diagrams showing signal propagation patterns and frequency allocations for various radio services in the region. Most people who interacted with Reeves dismissed his technical knowledge as the delusional rambling of a sick mind. They were wrong. On December 15, 2023, Thomas Reeves was performing routine maintenance on a parabolic antenna he had constructed from salvaged satellite television equipment when he intercepted a directional microwave transmission. The signal was encrypted, but Reeves had retained enough of his cryptographic training to recognize the modulation patterns as commercial-grade scrambling rather than military encryption. Using a combination of signal processing software running on a laptop computer he had rebuilt from discarded components, Reeves began the patient work of extracting voice data from the transmission. The process took 3 days of continuous analysis, during which he identified the signal as a point-to-point communication between two fixed locations: a warehouse in El Paso's industrial district and a coordination center across the border in Ciudad Juarez. The conversation was in Spanish, which Reeves understood well enough from his years living in border communities. Through painstaking audio cleanup and frequency analysis, he extracted enough clear segments to understand that he was listening to cartel logistics coordination. Key phrases emerged from the static: Jueves noche, Thursday night, Zona 5B, referring to a specific industrial area code, and Carret Leno, loaded reel, likely referring to cash transport. Most significantly, Reeves heard references to La Furgoneta Ciega, the blind van, and timing coordinates that suggested a regular weekly schedule. By cross-referencing these timestamps with traffic patterns he had observed from his elevated position in the substation, Reeves began to identify a pattern. Every Thursday night, a specific truck route passed through his area, carrying what the intercepted communications suggested was valuable cargo. For 3 weeks, Reeves conducted surveillance using equipment he had modified for long-range observation. He cataloged vehicle identification numbers, documented timing patterns, and recorded engine acoustics that allowed him to identify specific trucks even when he couldn't see them directly. His military training in signals intelligence had taught him that every electronic device, including vehicle computers, emits distinctive electromagnetic signatures that can be tracked and identified. On January 4, 2024, Reeves intercepted a transmission that changed everything. The conversation included specific references to 23 millones, 23 million, and scheduling details for a major cash transfer scheduled for later that month. The transmission also revealed a critical operational detail. The truck would be traveling with minimal security because its cargo was disguised as legitimate gaming equipment. More importantly, Reeves identified a 14-minute gap in the truck's route, where it would be traveling through an area with limited surveillance and no nearby security presence. The gap occurred when the truck transitioned from El Paso's main industrial corridor to the approach route for the Cordova Bridge border crossing. During this window, the vehicle would be passing directly through the abandoned industrial zone where Reeves lived. He began planning immediately. Reeves approached the heist with the methodical precision of an engineer solving a complex technical problem. He understood that success would depend on 3 critical factors: timing, weight displacement, and operational invisibility. The truck's cargo had to be removed and replaced without triggering any of the vehicle's security systems or leaving evidence that could be traced back to him. His first challenge was mechanical access. The truck's cargo bay was secured with electronic locks that were connected to the vehicle's central monitoring system. However, Reeves had identified a vulnerability in the design. The locks were powered by the truck's electrical system, which could be temporarily disrupted without triggering the security alert. Using a surplus electromagnetic pulse generator he had assembled from military disposal equipment, he could create a brief power interruption that would reset the lock mechanisms. The EMP device itself was a masterpiece of improvised engineering. Reeves had constructed it using capacitors salvaged from industrial air conditioning units, copper coil windings stripped from transformer stations, and timing circuits extracted from decommissioned military radar equipment. The device could generate a localized electromagnetic pulse with enough intensity to disrupt vehicle electronics within a 3-meter radius while remaining undetectable to standard electronic countermeasures. Most importantly, the pulse signature would mimic natural electromagnetic interference common in industrial areas, providing plausible cover for any system malfunctions. For physical access, Reeves modified a hydraulic lift system salvaged from an abandoned auto repair shop. The lift was designed to raise the entire rear section of a truck, high enough to access the cargo bay without the driver's knowledge. He reinforced the lift mechanism with steel beams and installed rubber padding to minimize noise and vibration. The entire assembly could be positioned and activated within minutes, then quickly disassembled and hidden. The hydraulic system required significant modifications to operate silently and efficiently. Reeves replaced the original pump with a quieter electric motor powered by deep-cycle marine batteries. He installed precision pressure regulators that allowed him to control the lifting speed with millimeter accuracy, preventing sudden movements that might alert the driver. The lift arms were fitted with custom cradles designed to distribute weight evenly across the truck's frame, eliminating stress points that could cause structural damage or unusual sounds. Testing the lift system required weeks of trial runs using abandoned vehicles in the industrial zone. Reeves documented the lifting characteristics of different truck models, measuring noise levels, vibration patterns, and the time required for various operations. He discovered that the optimal lifting speed was exactly 2.3 centimeters per second, fast enough to complete the operation within his time window, but slow enough to remain undetectable from inside the cab. The weight replacement problem required more sophisticated engineering. Reeves calculated that $23 million in mixed bills would weigh approximately 240 kilograms. To maintain the truck's weight distribution, he needed to create decoy materials that matched not only the total weight, but also the density and balance characteristics of currency bundles. Using molten lead from scavenged car batteries and wheel weights, Reeves cast precisely measured ingots that matched the dimensions of standard currency straps. He created silicone molds that allowed him to reproduce the exact size and weight of cash bundles, then wrapped the lead replicas in plastic film that mimicked the appearance of currency packaging. Each decoy bundle was crafted to be indistinguishable from real money when viewed through the truck's cargo sensors. The metallurgy involved in creating convincing decoys was remarkably complex. Lead alone was too dense, so Reeves created alloys by mixing lead with aluminum and copper to achieve the exact density of paper currency. He calculated that standard U.S. bills have a density of approximately 0.92 grams per cubic centimeter, accounting for the cotton-linen blend used in currency paper. His final alloy formula consisted of 73% lead, 19% aluminum, and 8% copper, which produced ingots with a density of 0.91 grams per cubic centimeter, close enough to fool electronic weight sensors. The molding process required precision that bordered on obsessive. Reeves studied genuine currency bundles to understand how they compressed under different pressures and how they distributed weight when stacked. He created compression chambers that simulated the exact pressure characteristics of bundled bills, ensuring that his lead replicas would behave identically to real money when subjected to the truck's sensor systems. The most critical element was timing. Reeves had determined that he would have exactly 14 minutes to execute the entire operation: position the lift, raise the truck, disable the locks, remove the cash, install the decoys, reseal the cargo bay, and remove all evidence of his presence. Any deviation from this timeline would result in the truck arriving late at the border crossing, potentially triggering an investigation. To ensure precision timing, Reeves programmed a digital countdown system using components from electronic traffic signals. The system would provide audio cues for each phase of the operation and automatically trigger backup protocols if any stage took longer than planned. He rehearsed the entire sequence dozens of times using weighted containers that simulated the actual cargo. The timing system incorporated multiple redundancies and fail-safes. Primary countdown was managed by a military-grade chronometer, synchronized with GPS atomic clock signals. Secondary timing used backup quartz oscillators that could maintain accuracy even if GPS signals were disrupted. The audio cueing system delivered commands through bone conduction headphones that allowed Reeves to hear instructions without blocking ambient sound that might indicate approaching vehicles or other threats. Each phase of the operation was broken down into precise subtasks with individual time allocations. Phase 1, equipment positioning and truck approach, was allocated 2 minutes 15 seconds. Phase 2, truck lifting and bay access, required exactly 3 minutes 30 seconds. Phase 3, cargo removal and replacement, was the most complex, requiring 6 minutes 45 seconds for 47 individual cassette exchanges. Phase 4, bay resealing and truck lowering, needed 1 minute 30 seconds. The final 45 seconds were reserved for equipment removal and area clearance. His final preparation was creating an escape route. Using his detailed knowledge of El Paso's underground infrastructure, Reeves identified a network of abandoned utility tunnels that connected his operational area to multiple exit points throughout the industrial district. He spent weeks clearing debris from these passages and installing battery-powered lighting systems that would allow him to navigate in complete darkness. The tunnel system itself was a forgotten relic of El Paso's industrial expansion in the 1960s and 1970s. Originally designed to house telecommunications cables and utility lines for a manufacturing complex that was never completed, the tunnels formed a grid pattern extending nearly 4 kilometers underground. Most access points had been sealed or forgotten, but Reeves had identified 7 viable entry and exit locations that could be accessed without detection. Preparing the tunnels for operational use required extensive engineering work. Reeves installed drainage systems to handle water infiltration, reinforced unstable sections with salvaged steel supports, and created ventilation shafts that prevented carbon dioxide buildup in enclosed spaces. The lighting system consisted of LED strips powered by buried battery banks that could operate for weeks without recharging. Most importantly, Reeves established multiple cache points throughout the tunnel network, where he could store equipment, supplies, and eventually the stolen money. Each cache was protected by waterproof seals and equipped with environmental controls that would preserve sensitive materials indefinitely. The cache locations were mapped using a coordinate system based on radio frequency allocations, ensuring that only someone with Reeves' specific technical knowledge could locate and access the stored materials. The tunnel preparation also involved creating false routes and dead ends, designed to confuse anyone who might attempt to follow his path. Reeves installed motion sensors and camera systems that would alert him to unauthorized access, and he created booby traps that would collapse tunnel sections if triggered by pursuit. The entire underground network became a fortress designed to protect both Reeves and his stolen fortune from any attempt at recovery. On the night of December 21, 2023, Thomas Reeves positioned himself in a drainage culvert approximately 200 meters from the point where the North Line Amusements truck would make its scheduled stop. He had been waiting since 10:30 p.m., using passive infrared sensors to monitor approaching traffic while avoiding detection by the truck's security systems. At 2:53 a.m., Reeves detected the distinctive electromagnetic signature of the target vehicle approaching from the northwest. Using a laser rangefinder, he confirmed the truck's identity by matching its dimensional profile against his surveillance data. The vehicle was traveling at approximately 45 kilometers per hour and would reach the interception point in approximately 90 seconds. As the truck passed the predetermined marker, Reeves activated a low-power signal jammer that temporarily disrupted the vehicle's GPS communication without triggering security alerts. The interference was designed to simulate the kind of intermittent signal loss common in industrial areas with heavy electromagnetic interference. To the truck's monitoring system, the disruption would appear as routine environmental interference rather than active jamming. The truck driver, following standard protocol for GPS signal loss, pulled over to allow the system to reacquire satellite contact. This created the operational window Reeves needed. Moving with practiced efficiency, he emerged from the drainage culvert and rapidly assembled his hydraulic lift system. The entire assembly process took less than 3 minutes, during which the truck driver remained in the cab waiting for GPS restoration. Using the electromagnetic pulse generator, Reeves temporarily disabled the truck's electrical system, causing a brief reset that unlocked the cargo bay doors. The pulse was carefully calibrated to mimic a power surge from a nearby electrical substation, providing plausible cover for the lock malfunction. With the cargo bay accessible, Reeves raised the rear section of the truck using the hydraulic lift. Inside the cargo bay, Reeves found 47 sealed metal cassettes arranged in precise rows and secured with elastic netting. Working by infrared light to avoid detection, he methodically opened each cassette using electromagnetic keycards he had programmed to match the container's locking frequencies. The process required absolute precision. Any damage to the cassettes would be immediately apparent during the next inspection. Each cassette contained between 12 and 15 bundles of currency, totaling approximately $490,000 per container. Reeves removed the cash bundles and replaced them with his precisely crafted lead decoys, ensuring that each replacement matched the original weight and dimensional characteristics. The substitution process took exactly 11 minutes and 37 seconds. After replacing all currency with decoy weights, Reeves resealed each cassette using electromagnetic locks that were programmed to display the same security codes as the original seals. The replacement locks were indistinguishable from the originals and would pass all standard security checks. He then restored the cargo bay to its original configuration and carefully lowered the truck using the hydraulic system. The final step was restoring the truck's electrical system and GPS communication. Reeves used a secondary electromagnetic pulse to reset the vehicle's computers, causing them to interpret the entire 14-minute window as a routine GPS blackout. When the systems came back online, all security indicators showed normal status, and the truck's weight sensors registered no change in cargo mass. As the truck departed the area and continued toward the border crossing, Reeves rapidly disassembled his equipment and transported the stolen currency to a predetermined cache point 3 kilometers away. The entire operation had been completed in 13 minutes and 54 seconds, well within the operational window he had calculated. By the time Mexican customs officials inspected the truck at the Cordova Bridge crossing, all evidence of the theft had been removed. The vehicle's security system showed no anomalies, the cargo weight matched the manifest exactly, and the electronic seals on all cassettes displayed proper authentication codes. The theft would not be discovered for another 36 hours, providing Reeves with ample time to secure the stolen money and begin planning his disappearance. Beneath El Paso's industrial district lies a forgotten network of utility tunnels, storm drains, and telecommunications conduits built over nearly a century of urban development. Most of these passages were abandoned when the city's infrastructure was modernized in the 1980s and 1990s, leaving behind a labyrinthine system of concrete corridors that few people knew existed. Thomas Reeves had spent years mapping this underground network, using his knowledge of civil engineering and urban planning to identify passages that connected his operational area to multiple exit points throughout the city. His exploration had revealed that many of the tunnels were still structurally sound and provided ideal concealment for long-term storage of sensitive materials. The primary cache location Reeves selected was a section of abandoned telecommunications conduit located 12 meters below street level. The conduit had been built in the 1970s to house fiber optic cables that were never installed due to budget constraints. The space was dry, temperature-controlled, and completely isolated from city utility systems that might be accessed by maintenance workers. Access to the conduit required navigating a complex route through storm drain systems and utility access points. Reeves had identified a maintenance hatch located in an abandoned loading dock that provided entry to the underground network. He reinforced this access point with steel plates and installed a concealed locking mechanism that would prevent accidental discovery by urban explorers or homeless individuals seeking shelter. Inside the telecommunications conduit, Reeves installed a sophisticated storage system designed to protect the stolen currency from environmental damage and detection. He constructed waterproof containers from PVC pipe and military surplus electronics cases, each sealed with industrial gaskets and equipped with desiccant packets to prevent moisture damage. The containers were designed to be completely undetectable by standard metal detection equipment and would not register on electromagnetic surveys. Each storage container was labeled with frequency codes and numerical sequences that appeared to be random but actually corresponded to a coordinate system Reeves had developed based on radio frequency allocations. This coding system would allow him to locate specific containers even in complete darkness while preventing anyone else from understanding the organization's scheme. The stolen $23 million was divided among 37 containers, with each container holding between $500,000 and $700,000 in currency. Reeves deliberately avoided creating any containers with exactly the same amount, ensuring that if any single cache was discovered, it would not reveal the total scope of the theft. He also included decoy containers filled with obsolete electronic components that would confuse anyone attempting to map his storage system. To further complicate potential recovery efforts, Reeves installed multiple access routes to the storage area. Some containers could only be reached through storm drain systems, while others required access through abandoned subway tunnels or utility maintenance shafts. This redundancy ensured that even if one access route was compromised, the majority of the stolen money would remain secure. The underground storage system represented the culmination of Reeves's paranoid genius, a hiding place so thoroughly integrated into El Paso's forgotten infrastructure that it could remain undiscovered indefinitely. The stolen millions were now buried in a concrete maze known only to a homeless man who had already begun planning his own disappearance. For 9 weeks following the heist, Thomas Reeves conducted a carefully orchestrated series of cash extraction operations designed to gradually convert the stolen currency into untraceable assets. His approach was methodical and patient, recognizing that any attempt to move large amounts of money quickly would inevitably attract attention from law enforcement agencies investigating the theft. Reeves made 11 separate recovery runs between January 25th and March 28th, 2024. Each operation involved accessing different sections of his underground storage network and retrieving between $150,000 and $300,000 in currency. He deliberately varied the timing, routes, and methods for each extraction to avoid establishing any detectable patterns that could be identified through surveillance or forensic analysis. His first extraction occurred 6 days after the heist, when news reports confirmed that the theft had been discovered but provided no details about investigative leads. Reeves accessed the storage network through a storm drain outlet located beneath an abandoned railway bridge, emerging in an industrial area known for transient encampments. He carried the money in military surplus containers disguised as scavenged electronic equipment. The conversion process required accessing El Paso's underground economy, a network of pawn shops, scrap dealers, and informal financial services that operated outside traditional banking systems. Reeves had identified several businesses that would exchange large amounts of cash for gold, electronics, or other portable assets without requiring extensive documentation. These transactions were typically associated with undocumented workers or small business owners seeking to avoid tax obligations. His preferred method was exchanging currency for precious metals through coin dealers and scrap metal operations. Gold and silver could be easily transported and converted to cash in different geographic locations, providing an additional layer of separation from the original theft. Reeves also purchased high-value electronics, tools, and collectibles that could be resold through online marketplaces or specialty dealers. Security camera footage from various businesses showed a man matching Reeves' general description conducting transactions, but his appearance was consistently disguised through clothing changes, facial hair modifications, and posture adjustments. In one notable incident, surveillance video from a precious metals dealer captured him wearing a heavy winter parka and pushing a shopping cart that contained approximately $200,000 hidden in the lining. Reeves' most sophisticated operation involved establishing relationships with local bookmakers and illegal gambling operations that regularly handled large cash transactions. These businesses provided ideal cover for converting stolen money because their operations were already outside legal oversight, and their operators had strong incentives to avoid law enforcement contact. Through careful cultivation of these relationships, Reeves was able to exchange currency for gambling chips that could later be redeemed at different locations. Between extractions, Reeves maintained his previous lifestyle as a homeless scavenger, continuing to live in the abandoned substation and conduct routine activities that would reinforce his cover identity. This consistency was crucial for avoiding suspicion. Any dramatic change in his behavior or circumstances could have attracted attention from law enforcement agencies investigating the theft. By early March 2024, Reeves had successfully converted approximately $18 million of the stolen currency into untraceable assets. The remaining $5 million remained in underground storage, providing a reserve that could be accessed if his other assets were compromised. More importantly, the successful conversion operations had provided him with the resources necessary to execute the final phase of his plan: complete disappearance from all official records and surveillance systems. On March 15, 2024, Thomas Reeves began the systematic elimination of all evidence that could connect him to the heist or reveal his future plans. This process, which he privately referred to as ghosting, involved destroying his improvised workshop, eliminating his established routines, and creating false evidence that would mislead any investigation into his disappearance. His first step was dismantling the technical equipment in his substation workshop. Rather than simply abandoning the materials, Reeves methodically destroyed or removed every item that could provide forensic evidence of his activities. Electronic components were dissolved in acid solutions, metal parts were melted down using improvised furnaces, and paper documents were incinerated using thermite charges he constructed from aluminum powder and iron oxide. The destruction process was designed to appear consistent with an accidental fire or explosion. Reeves used accelerants and electrical malfunctions to create burn patterns that would suggest equipment failure rather than deliberate destruction. When investigators eventually examined the substation, they would find evidence of a catastrophic electrical fire, but no indication that sensitive materials had been deliberately destroyed. Simultaneously, Reeves began creating false evidence of mental deterioration and possible suicide. He scattered personal belongings around El Paso's industrial district and prepared an abandoned hovel near the rail yards where his final belongings would be discovered. The building was scheduled for demolition, ensuring limited forensic examination. Inside the hovel, investigators found handwritten notes describing paranoid delusions and references to final solutions that could be interpreted as suicide plans. The final element involved permanently sealing all access points to the underground tunnel system using welding equipment. When the hovel fire was discovered on March 16th, investigators found no human remains but evidence suggesting recent habitation. The absence of a body was initially attributed to fire intensity, but the lack of bone fragments eventually led investigators to conclude that no one had actually died in the fire. By this time, Thomas Reeves had vanished completely from all surveillance systems, financial records, and human contact. His disappearance was so thorough that investigators began to question whether he had ever been involved in the heist at all. 14 months later, city workers excavating near the abandoned grain terminal uncovered a sealed PVC pipe containing $127,000 in currency, matching the stolen bill's serial numbers, and a waterproof notepad with detailed technical diagrams and handwritten notes. The notepad contained precise engineering calculations related to electromagnetic pulse generation and a cipher key labeled TX-Freak/Legacy Map 1,996 inches, referencing classified frequency allocations from Reeves' time at Raytheon Defense Systems. The final page contained a coded message. "Nobody listened when I connected the country. I just disconnected the bad ones." Analysis revealed extensive modifications to the utility tunnel system, including welded barriers and sealed chambers. The cipher key references suggested multiple storage locations using a complex coding system, with the recovered money possibly representing deliberate breadcrumbs rather than a significant portion of the stolen funds. The discovery raised national security concerns about retained classified information and expanded the FBI investigation to determine whether Reeves had been recruited by foreign parties or was operating independently. As of late 2025, the investigation into Thomas Reeves and the $23 million heist remains open. Despite extensive efforts to decode his cipher system and locate additional cache sites, law enforcement agencies have been unable to recover the majority of the stolen money or determine Reeves' current whereabouts. The case has become a cautionary tale about the intersection of mental illness, technical expertise, and criminal opportunity in modern urban environments. The man who disappeared into El Paso's underground infrastructure has become something between legend and nightmare. A reminder that in a world increasingly dependent on electronic systems and digital security, the greatest threats sometimes come from those who understand the technology better than the people trying to protect it. Thomas Reeves, whether dead or alive, had achieved something unprecedented. He had outsmarted a Mexican cartel, evaded federal investigation, and vanished into the concrete labyrinth beneath an American city with $23 million that has never been recovered. The echo of his message still resonates through the investigation files. "Nobody listened when I connected the country. I just disconnected the bad ones." In the end, a homeless man dismissed as crazy had proven himself to be perhaps the most dangerous kind of criminal, one who combined brilliant technical knowledge with absolutely nothing left to lose.